Chapter 6. Writings connected with Mary Magdalene and Sophia. The writings connected with Mary Magdalene and Sophia occupy a special and deeply symbolic place within the Gnostic canon. They form a constellation of texts that center on the divine feminine, not as an object of devotion or allegory, but as the intimate expression of divine wisdom itself. In the world of the Gnostic Gospels, these writings reveal a current of spirituality where the feminine is the voice of knowledge, mediation, and remembrance. Unlike the apocalyptic or cosmological treatises that map the origin of the universe, or the dialogues devoted to instruction and initiation, this group of writings speaks from the interior space of the soul, the place of intuition, compassion, and revelation through feeling as much as through thought. They present knowledge not as conquest or vision, but as intimacy, the recognition of the divine within the human. The central figures of these works, Mary Magdalene and Sophia, represent two aspects of the same principle. Mary, the human disciple who understands the secret teachings of Christ, becomes the image of awakened consciousness, a wisdom that surpasses external authority. Sophia, the eternal feminine of Gnostic cosmology, is the divine mind's yearning for self-knowledge, the principle through which God contemplates and reveals himself in creation. Together they express a complete vision of knowledge as both descent and return, spirit entering matter to awaken itself, and the soul rising through awareness back to its original light. Philosophically, these writings transform theology into experience. The divine is not separate or aloof, it speaks through the feminine as revelation of the heart's intelligence, where understanding and compassion become one. These texts are famous for their subversive tenderness, for the way they overturn hierarchical and patriarchal assumptions about knowledge and authority. In them, truth is not imposed but shared, not taught but remembered. The feminine voice, whether embodied in Mary, Sophia, or in symbolic figures like Noria, becomes the sound of divine self-recognition, the insight that connects the cosmic and the personal. Their tone is visionary but intimate, weaving myth and reflection into poetry and prayer. They reject the separation between knowing and being, between thought and light, proposing instead that revelation happens through integration, the uniting of the spiritual and the human, the transcendent and the earthly, within a single living consciousness. In this chapter, we will turn our attention specifically to The Thought of Noria, a brief but remarkable work that embodies the essence of this tradition. The other major writings in this lineage, the Gospel of Mary, the Sophia of Jesus Christ, and the Thunder, Perfect Mind, sometimes called the Perfect Thunder, have been explored in earlier chapters, and the monumental Pistis Sophia will not be included here due to its vast scope and complexity. The Thought of Noria, however, stands as a quiet yet potent testament to the same current of divine feminine revelation. This short text, preserved among the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, presents Noria as the luminous counterpart to Sophia, the spiritual daughter, or the soul itself, awakening to its origin in the realm of light. Her voice is the cry of insight rising from the depths of the material world, affirming her kinship with the divine against the ignorance of the archons who seek to bind her. Yet her resistance is not rebellion but remembrance. She claims her lineage through knowledge, naming herself as thought, Enoia, the reflection of the divine mind in matter. The work transforms myth into mysticism, showing that liberation is accomplished not through conflict but through the act of knowing who one truly is. The symbols that move through the thought of Noria, light and fire, feminine spirit, the voice of protest that becomes affirmation, resonate with other Sophia-inspired texts but in a condensed, lyrical form. Fire represents purity and consciousness, the spark that no darkness can extinguish. The name of Noria, like that of Sophia, signifies thought made living, the intelligence that remembers its source even when surrounded by shadow. Her awakening mirrors that of the soul itself, the realization that what the world calls weakness or error is in truth the beginning of wisdom. Philosophically, the text expresses one of the most enduring insights of Gnostic spirituality, that divine wisdom is not confined to heaven but is sown throughout creation, waiting to be remembered in each soul. In Noria's voice we hear the continuation of Sophia's song and Mary's understanding, the eternal dialogue between transcendence and immanence, thought and love. The Thought of Noria distills the feminine current of Gnosticism into a single, luminous gesture, the affirmation of self-knowledge as freedom, and of the human heart as the mirror in which divine wisdom recognizes itself. Thought of Noria. The Thought of Noria is one of the most delicate and mysterious voices within the Gnostic tradition, a short but radiant hymn to divine remembrance and the awakening of the soul. Though preserved only in a fragmentary form, it holds a unique place among the Gnostic writings for its lyrical tone and its portrayal of the feminine principle not as fallen or repentant, but as innately luminous. Within the tapestry of the Gnostic Gospels, it stands as the echo of Sophia's wisdom, translated into the figure of Noria, her spiritual daughter or counterpart. Noria embodies the human soul's divine origin, the spark of light that resists the ignorance of the material order and remembers its home in the realm of spirit. Unlike the theological complexity of texts such as the Apocryphon of John or the symbolic density of Pistis Sophia, the thought of Noria is poetic rather than systematic. It does not describe vast cosmological hierarchies, nor does it dramatize revelation through dialogue. Instead, it speaks as a meditation, a song of recognition. Noria's thought is not mere contemplation but consciousness itself, the living awareness of divine presence within a world that has forgotten its source. By giving voice to the wisdom that sleeps in matter, the text transforms what might seem a minor mythic episode into a universal spiritual metaphor, the awakening of self-knowledge as an act of liberation. The work is famous for its tone of defiance and dignity. Noria confronts the archons, the ignorant rulers who govern the material world, and refuses to submit to their illusions. Her resistance is not violent, it is born of knowing. She proclaims her divine origin, identifying herself with the eternal Ennoia, the first thought of the divine mind, and by doing so, she transcends the boundaries imposed by the created order. In this brief encounter, the reader witnesses the essence of gnosis distilled into a single moment, enlightenment as the realization of identity between the soul and its source. The archon's power dissolves in the face of awareness, for ignorance cannot master what knows itself as divine. The imagery that animates the thought of Noria is both cosmic and intimate. Fire and light serve as symbols of knowledge and purity, the inner flame that cannot be extinguished by the darkness of matter. The female figure of Noria mirrors Sophia, yet she also represents every soul that has remembered its origin after long sleep. Her thought is the reflection of divine consciousness in human awareness, the point where transcendence becomes imminent. In her speech we hear not lamentation but affirmation, the rediscovery of power through understanding, the transformation of exile into awakening. Philosophically, the text expresses one of the central insights of the Gnostic worldview, the refusal to separate knowledge from identity. To know is to become, and to remember is to return. Noria's recognition of her nature reveals the Gnostic belief that salvation is not bestowed from outside but arises from within, when the divine spark recognizes its kinship with the eternal light. This act of self-knowing unites the metaphysical and the personal, turning myth into psychology and revelation into introspection. In the broader tradition of the Gnostic Gospels, the thought of Noria endures as a symbol of the feminine dimension of awakening. Its brevity conceals a vast resonance. It is the whispered continuation of Sophia's story and the prelude to the enlightenment of all souls. By giving voice to the wisdom that defies domination and shines in the midst of obscurity, it transforms the idea of knowledge into an act of remembrance. The text's enduring beauty lies in its simplicity, in the quiet revelation that illumination does not descend from above, but awakens from within, as the eternal thought of light rising once more in the heart of its reflection. Father of all, Ennoia of the light, dwelling in the heights above the regions below, light dwelling in the heights, voice of truth, upright nous, untouchable logos, and ineffable voice, incomprehensible Father. It is Noria who cries out to them. They heard, and they received her into her place forever. They gave it to her in the Father of nous, Adamus, as well as the voice of the Holy Ones, in order that she might rest in the ineffable Epinoia, in order that Shia might inherit the first mind which Shia had received, and that Shia might rest in the divine autogenes, and that she, too, might generate herself, just as she also has inherited the living logos, and that she might be joined to all of the imperishable ones, and speak with the mind of the Father. And she began to speak with the words of life, and she remained in the presence of the Exalted One, possessing that which she had received before the world came into being. She has the great mind of the Invisible One, and she gives glory to her Father, and she dwells within those who, within the pleroma, and she beholds the pleroma. There will be days when she will behold the pleroma, and she will not be in deficiency, for she has the four holy helpers who intercede on her behalf with the Father of the All, Adamus. He it is who is within all of the atoms, possessing the thought of Noria, who speaks concerning the two names which create a single name.